Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Bikinis After Babies. Thank you so much for joining us today. As always, I am one of your hosts, Mandy Rashawn, here with your other fabulous IFBB host, Jillian Hughes.
Hey everybody, thank you so much for tuning in today. If you are watching us on video, you'll see we have a very beautiful guest joining us today. We're so excited to have her here. We're really excited about this episode. So today we have for you IFBB Bikini Pro, Simone Maman from Balance and Body Diagnostics. Simone is a wife, a mom of 5, and a functional health practitioner, holistic and sports nutritionist, and eating psychology coach. Simone began competing in 2010 and won her pro card in 2013 at the Canadian Natural Pro Qualifier. And she learned she was pregnant with her 4th child as she was competing that year in the IFBB Pro League. While Simone had previously decided to retire from competitive bodybuilding, she has plans to return to the stage in 2026 in the IFBB Fit Model Division. Simone and her business partner Angelica founded Balance and Body Diagnostics after seeing the need for functional lab testing and wellness protocols for female athletes, specifically in the bodybuilding space. Simone's passion for helping others learn the root cause of health issues they are facing stems from her own personal health journey and learning that some of her problems that she faced on her journey were not only her body fighting her, but rather her body trying to nudge her body back to center. She encourages others to test, not guess, and helps female athletes all over the world thrive without sacrificing their health. Welcome to Bikinis After Babies, Simone Maman.
Thank
Welcome.
you so much for having me. I'm glad that the snowstorm didn't actually keep kids at home today and that we're going to be able to have this conversation hopefully
Yes.
peacefully.
Yes, absolutely. Well, we are so excited to have you on today. We have so
Thank you.
much to cover, but we always like to, when we have our guests on, we like to talk a little bit about how they got started. So tell us a little bit about how you were introduced to the sport of bodybuilding.
So, bodybuilding bodybuilding actually I feel like was a challenge that was presented to me. I've been athletic my whole life, as most of us I think in the bodybuilding space have been, whether it be, like childhood sports, college sports. So I grew up dancing competitively and I was in martial arts as well. Fast forward to that stage in life where you're married and you've got all these additional responsibilities and you tend to like drop the ball on the ballet classes, and I did exactly that, but I was desperate for something else. I needed to move my body. I needed to challenge myself. That's like a huge theme in my life. I need to experience challenge. And so of course I stepped foot into a gym, loved training, and it wasn't so much that I enjoyed the feedback that I was getting. It was that I was puzzled by the feedback that I was getting. So it started off as, wow, you look great. People are often, it's an aesthetic space, and oftentimes we train for aesthetic goals. So it's natural to hear aesthetic-based feedback, compliments. But eventually, as I started to have kids, and after my 3rd is when I started to hear it the most, it was, wow, you look great. And then there was a caveat. It was like, wow, you look great, comma, for having kids. And that was really puzzling to me because I kept hearing it over and over again. Like that was the general consensus. And to me, what it communicated was that there's a ceiling as a mom, and it's lower than the ceiling is for a woman who hasn't had kids at all. And that was really angering to me, and that became the challenge because I had basically 2 options. I could either adopt that mentality and be like, yeah, I look great for having kids, which I know effectively would have been me showing up less, putting forth less effort, and probably setting smaller goals, if any at all. Like I think I probably could have just become really lax where I was. Or I could have challenged that idea, rejected it, and been like, hold my beer. Well, I guess in this case it would have been hold my protein shake. Let me show you. Right?
Yes.
And that's what it was. And so, I knew that there were like other competitors at the gym. I just kind of started hearing the buzz, and that's it. I got my first coach, prepped for my first show, and I showed him. Because at that point I had 3 kids in tow. I won my first show. At the time it was with, not with the IFBB, so I competed with a few federations, FAME, UFE, WBFF. I won my pro card with all 3 of those in my first show, which again, there's that theme. That wasn't a challenge, so I hated it. And I was like, no, there's got to be something more, and eventually ended up with our Canadian version at the time of the NPC. At the regional level was the OPA, so the Ontario Physique Association, and I didn't win my first show. I took 2nd place to Justine Monroe,
Oh,
So I don't know.
she's a legend.
How
I know exactly who she is.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I was like, how far back does your bikini history go?
Very far for me.
But Justine, I mean, I think to this day, there are people who are still like, who can confidently say, we would have been okay seeing her win that Olympia, right? I mean, Justine was an
Yes.
absolute icon, and her glutes were gluten before before that was the trend. So yeah, I remember standing backstage, and I came in with this little bit of an ego, I guess. I'm like, I just show up and I win. Like, that's just what I do. And yeah, I came in with very much that attitude, and they had lined us up. Alphabetically by our last names. And so now I'm Maman, but at the time I was actually competing under a different last name. I was competing as Simone Sinclair. It was a name that followed me from my work in television. I used to host TV, and that was like my, whatever, it was my stage name. Anyhow, so Simone Sinclair is behind Justine Monroe. And good that I was, because had I been Maman, I would have been in front of her, and I wouldn't have seen what I seen, which was the most exceptional glute projection like I'd ever seen.
Yeah.
We're used to seeing these things today, but at the time, like, she was just, she was an alien. Like, she was so epic. And I just remember looking at her little bum, not little bum, big bum. And I was like, oh, well, there goes first place. There goes first place. And I would say that honestly, if I wasn't hooked after my very first show, that was it, because that's when I felt it. Like, I truly felt it, that, wait a minute, I can do more. That's when that idea of, like, you look great for having had kids was truly challenged. And yeah, that was it. And so I just kept competing, and I had to take my my break because, well, for a lot of different reasons. Life happened, but also because, and this is not me judging whether or not bikini and the bikini aesthetic should have gone the way that it did. It's fine, but it wasn't the bikini that I wanted to compete in anymore. And so I've said for so long that I want to go back. Like, I miss bikini, but she's not there anymore. And so now we have Fit Model. And so here we are, putting our heels back on.
Yeah. Oh, I bet you're so excited. Like, so it took me a minute when you said Justine Monroe, but I'm like, wait a minute. I know exactly who you're talking about. Like, it took me a second. But I was like, I remember those glutes. I remember, like, she had a lilac, I think, colored suit, or like a blue suit.
Beautiful blonde. She had great abs. I mean, she was
She did. She had
super
phenomenal
athletic
abs.
physique. Yeah.
But she had glutes before glutes were, like, supposed to be projection. Yes. Anyway.
That's exactly. Yeah, she was one of the only blondes on stage. And I remember, listen, everybody does it now. They look over their shoulder and they give the little shoulder pop. Yeah, she did that. If she ever listens to this, I'm giving this one to you. You get the nod. That shoulder nod was hers from the get-go. She just, you know what? She looked like an athlete. She looked like a combination of, like, girl next door. You wanted her to be your best friend. Your brother probably would have wanted to date her, but also, like, super athletic looking.
Yeah.
I thought she was perfect. Honestly, so beautiful. And still today, like, if I had to put anybody up, on my screensaver, it actually still might be her. So yeah, she was. Thank God Justine was there, and she beat me that day, because she beat a whole lot of ambition into me.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So now that you're returning to the stage, you mentioned sort of, that bikini girl, she's always been in there. So what's your why now for returning and doing the Fit Model? Because now, fast forward, we're in our 40s, things are a little bit different. Now you're a mom of 5. So has the why changed?
So much. I think I was very, it's interesting, because I won my pro card, I was 34 years old. And so quite a bit older than everybody else on stage, because I won it. I didn't win it in the masters category. It was very important to me, again, with those challenges. I wanted to win it natural, open. So I wanted to stand on stage with, like, the 18-year-olds, me with 3 kids in tow at the time, and still win it. And I did. The thing is that from that point, I was really using the industry for my own benefit. It was about, what do I have to gain? What do I want to heal within myself? What kind of processing work, am I going to do under that bar? And so, and then the industry received that well and gave me a lot of love. I was really successful. I won 4 national titles. I never broke that top 5, but I came in, in top 10 in my rookie show at the Toronto Pro, which was at the time a tier 1 show. But again, it was really about, what can I take from this? So my mental growth, my personal growth, my physical growth, and even my business growth. A lot of it sort of was very much connected to the fact that I had a decent time on stage. I don't feel that way anymore. I don't feel like I even want anything from the industry. With everything that I've been through now, I want to go back and give. That honestly, nothing would make me happier than to be able to speak to other athletes who are currently on stage, or maybe somebody who's sitting in the wings, maybe even a mom who's wondering, like, can I, should I? I want to be able to guide those individuals to the stage and to help them stay there for as long as they can, meaning with their health in check, so they can leave on their own terms. I'm just excited to be able to go back and kind of put, I don't know, it's like putting the star up on the tree of that initial mission, which was challenge the idea that there is some sort of limit to what a mom can do. And so now by the time I get on stage, I'll be 46 years old with my 5 kids. And I think that's a massive testament to what the female body, and I'll say the female spirit, is also capable of if she's guided well, with scientifically sound protocols, with a really great community around her, and like I said, just with the guts to actually give it a try. So yeah, I'm just excited to kind of underscore the message that I was trying to send to myself back then. I want to come back and be like, so I tried, and it's true, and you can do it too.
I love that so much.
Yeah.
I'll be 46 in 2026 also, and I would say it's the same for me. Like I the caveat kind of is like, for me, oh, you look great for 40, you look great for 41, and I'm like, what in your mind, what does 41 look like? I'm so confused, like, because around me I see other amazing women. I see women that are in their 50s and 60s at my gym, with me training, and I just see all this strength and beauty and us staying healthy. And so, I for the same reasons, I want to just put it out there, share my journey, so that other people can do the same thing. And even if they're picking up the weights later than when we started, like, it's never too late to start,
It's never too late. And it's interesting because I feel like when, your mission is only a self-serving one, it can be really easy or easier to negotiate your way out of checking off all those boxes every single day, because, like, who does it even matter to? It's just me. But when you decide that you're going to be accountable to onlookers, to people for whom your success actually does matter, it just puts so much more pep in your step, and it makes the process actually easier, because there's no negotiation anymore. There's going to be no sessions skipped, no extra licks and bites, and with that being said, there's also no circumventing the right way to do it for me, just because I want to be able to tell my story of process with transparency and with honesty. So yeah, I'm just stoked for this coming year.
I love it. That's awesome. So take me through the journey from the beginnings in fitness into where you are now with functional nutrition and the coaching and the business that you've created.
So where I am with respect to, like, how I got to functional health?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Sure. So functional health was actually something that I didn't realize I was being taught when I was little, but I was. I grew up with dealing with 2 sort of main issues, one being, actually there were more than 2. Hypoglycemia, so very dysregulated blood sugars. I later discovered that I have Wolff-Parkinson-White syndrome, which is basically it's an arrhythmia, so there's kind of like an extra little pathway in my heart that sometimes blood pumps that way, heart gets a little bit stressed out, heartbeats get dysregulated. I have a coagulation disorder, so a laundry list of issues that my pediatrician at the time, I was really fortunate, although she was conventionally trained, she's a regular MD, she was very old school. She was from the Ukraine, and she still had that old school mentality, which is very much in line with functional health practices. And so she taught me really, really young. Like, I remember being 8 years old sitting in her office, and she's teaching me about balancing blood sugars. She's like, we're always going to make sure that we have a protein and a fat snack. And, so she was explaining to me what that was. And so, foods that have higher amounts of fat are this, and foods that have more protein are that. And, we talked a lot about stress management because of Wolff-Parkinson-White syndrome and even the implications of stress on our blood sugars. And so, my hypoglycemia. So it was interesting because functional health strategies were that was my prescription, right? I didn't grow up on medications. I never had to deal with insulin or anything like that. She was a big believer in doing the diet and lifestyle stuff first, right? Before we introduce any sort of pharmaceutical or other interventions. So it was just always what I did. when I came into bodybuilding, I was really fortunate because that background and like the things that, it wasn't that they like mattered to me because I was like, oh, this is better than that. It was like, this is literally what actually allows me to get through my day and not end up hospitalized. Those values had to be mirrored by my protocol. So when I was out looking for coaches, it always mattered to me that my health mattered to them. So I can't even tell that story of like, oh, I just, my hormones collapsed and I had horrible, like, gut distension and dysbiosis and all of these symptoms because my, coaches were overtraining me and underfeeding me, because that wasn't actually the case. Like, I was really, really blessed. The coach that actually took me to my pro card win was Dr. Lane Norton. So like, we were doing reverse dieting again before it was cool. He's got an incredible program that he put out with an education company based out of Australia, Clean Health, I believe it is. And I decided to take it because, always learn more, right? And there was this one section on reverse dieting, and he used me, and actually my prep from my pro card win to my first show, which was the Toronto Pro, we reversed into that show all the way through. And I came in looking leaner, tighter, just better, and honestly so much more vibrant. Like, I looked kind of a bit run down, I would say, at my pro card win, and so much healthier at the Toronto Pro. So just to say that, like, I didn't actually experience like a complete collapse of my health until quite recently. So this was just going a few years back, and I think it was just a function of, trying to build businesses, trying to raise babies, navigating life's ups and downs, and being away from stage. So not actually turning, the energy inward and focusing on my self-care daily, because the stage actually, prep does allow us to do that. How you choose to address that is your own business. But
right.
I wasn't competing anymore, and so I just started focusing on everybody else instead of myself. And I got to a point where, and it's a story that I tell frequently, because it's just like, it still shocks me even today, like saying it and hearing myself say it, but I gained 20 pounds over 7 weeks. And it had me questioning everything about myself, from like intellectually, professionally, because it's like, how is it that you could be in this space, and not just as a competitor, as an athlete, but I graduated with my first designation in nutrition some 20 years prior to that, because of everything that I'd gone through growing up. Like, that was just such a keen interest for me. And I thought, like, how could this be? And now, during those 7 weeks, I tried all the protocols, right? I did everything that had always worked. So, I dropped my calories, right? I rejigged my macros. I tracked viciously. I was so like, just particular, acute with it. I increased my, my workouts and my cardio, and it almost felt as though the more I did, it wasn't that it felt, I saw it on the scale, I saw it on my waistline. The more I did, the worse it got. And it wasn't even just, okay, she's gaining weight. It was, and this is the thing, right? I guess, again, being someone coming from a competitive background in a sport as aesthetically charged as bodybuilding, it was really the widening waistline that, like, got me to actually wake up. But thinking back, the symptoms had been there for so long, right? So hair fall. And so I bought all the rosemary oils, and there was actually one that seemed to work quite well, but I bought all the oils and all the hairsprays, minoxidil, and there was joint pain, like horrific joint pain. Yeah. I remember, like, just walking up the stairs and, like, this hurts. Why can't I breathe? Like, I'm not out of shape. What is happening? Exhaustion, getting up in the morning. And, I went through the phase of being tired but wired, and then I was just exhausted. Yeah. Cognitive decline, like, no memory. Why am I here? What am I doing? Can't remember people's names. Missing deadlines, missing appointments. Like, literally had a client show up once at clinic and had no idea why she was there. Didn't even realize that I had an appointment that day. So just, like, a lot of emotionality too, sadness when I had nothing to be sad about, because my life was pretty great. And I took audit, I took inventory, and, like, nothing made sense. And so I went back to school. and I learned, and and it wasn't, again, anything that I was unfamiliar with. Like, over the years of my practice, I had been referring a lot of clients out to different practitioners, to functional health practitioners, to my own naturopath if they were local, because I knew that those systems worked really well, that they were truly healing and not just like, symptom smackers. So yeah, I went back to school because it was just, listen, I'll always take the opportunity to learn if I can. And so, yeah, that was it. It was, I had a choice between either becoming somebody's client, like going back to my naturopath, or getting really into the weeds of what was going on. So yeah, it took a minute, about a year and a half of working towards healing, but I did do it. And I'll tell you that I did it actually at a time when my husband was on military deployment in the Middle East. So he was gone for about 9 months. And that's when the bulk of my healing happened, which is pretty crazy because stress is such a key component when it comes to health, like overall health markers, your overall metabolic health. And so you would think like, well, that must have been an extremely stressful time, but this is the whole thing. It's like we have this total stress capacity. And although that one was huge, right? Like his absence was a massive stressor in the household. We missed him desperately. And it was, obviously he wasn't somewhere nice. He was, somewhere where there was threat to life. It was dangerous. But actually working on being able to reduce all of the other stressors from everything that I've learned in functional health gave me, one, my health and my vitality back, and two, the ability to contend with the fact that he wasn't there and be the stabilizer in our home. So I'm never going back. And there isn't a client that comes through my space that isn't going to enjoy the benefit of my experience and everything that functional health has to offer.
Yeah, it's fascinating because I think that there's probably a handful of people listening that have a story just like that. Because as I'm listening, I have a story just like that of my own journey. And then there's people who are like, that won't happen to me. But this plants a seed to let people know that if you're on the other side of it and this happens to you, there are resources, there are things that you can do, because if you just go to your doctor and they just take one look at a few, standard tests and, you're fine, just try drinking more water and just, manage your stress better. And here's an anxiety pill. And, and my issue was gut issues. So it was, okay, you can go and have this test done and we can refer you to a gastroenterologist. And I was like, really? But I'm like a healthy person. What's going on? And then you kind of come back to this place of oh, it's stress. But what do you do if you can't change the fact that your husband is deployed and that you have 5 children in your house and you're running a business? So I think what's alarming for people is just to realize I don't adapt to stress the way I used to. What do? I can't change my situation. So I think it just kind of comes to finding a way to be more resilient amidst everything that's going on. Is that kind of the main message?
I think that if I present it that way, I recognize that in and of itself can be really stressful for people to hear. Because what does that mean? Be less stressed? How? Girl, look at my life, right? When we look at stress from the standpoint of not just, bills to pay, mortgage, kids running around, but also potentially gut infections, hormonal, disruption. So hormones up, hormones down, just general dysregulation, oxidative stress, the types of products that we're using and all the, exogenous hormones that we're introducing into our system that are endocrine disruptors. When we look at, not just the acute stress of training and sometimes, yes, overtraining, but also the stress of not moving enough because we're just busy and we're just tired. There's also the perceived stress. What are the conversations that we're having with ourselves inside our head? What are we looking at on social media? Is it actually lifting your spirit, or is it actually causing you to start comparing yourself to people who, let's be real, they don't even exist? We just kind of came in and out of the potential TikTok ban, and there were all of these influencers online. I don't know if you saw this on the last day supposedly of TikTok who were like, so by the way, I've been lying all this time. I never actually did those workouts.
I heard about this.
Hey, first of all, why? Why would you do this? What is the motivation? Why would you out yourself that way? Take that to your grave.
And then the next day, TikTok's back. Oops.
Right.
I can't take
it.
It's
Oh, hey, it's me, the liar, right? But the thing is that we oftentimes expose ourselves to content, to media that is subconsciously creating a tremendous amount of mental anguish, feelings of inadequacy. That's all stress, right? So when our body is taking in the full load of everything it's exposed to throughout the day, whether it's training from stress, training from a gut infection, reacting to a gut infection, reacting to, gut dysbiosis, hormones, or perceived stress, right? So I think that person is looking at me funny. It all metabolizes and creates the same chemical cascade in the body. So when we talk about, managing your stress better, I'm not saying like just be happy and pretend everything's okay. I'm saying do a proper audit of your life. So maybe all you can do is switch and ditch products in your house. Maybe all you can do is just use up the Windex that you've already got. Okay, I'm not telling you to go out and spend money that you don't need to and you have, decent products in your house. Use it up, but maybe on the next time that you go out, purchase something that is going to present less of a toxic load to your household, right? Maybe when you're done kind of flipping, burgers on that very scratched up Teflon that is, leaching heavy metals into your food, and you're ready to go and buy something new, maybe go and buy something better, something that's going to be low tox or less tox, because that matters, right? I mean, I'm going to be really horrible right now because you're going to see me pull out like my plastic, beautiful Starbucks, cup. But don't do this. Do as I say. Don't do as I do. Don't drink out of plastic if you can, right? So that's what I'm saying. Even something as simple as reducing the toxic load that you're exposing your cells, your DNA to, could be enough to make a little bit of room for healing, right? And like I said, social media, go scroll through. It's the most fun ever to unfollow. Like, it's actually so therapeutic. It's so cathartic. You know how hard it is when you have to like go into like your house and do like a deep clean? It takes days, months. Sometimes we start out, we never finish it. And that's like so upsetting, right? You just feel so defeated by the whole process. But in your phone, just take 5 minutes at a time. Just be like, no. Don't overthink it. What was that content creator? It was all about like joy. What was her name? Marie something.
Marie Kondo?
Something like that. Yes, maybe that's actually it, right? And that was it. It was like if it doesn't give you joy, chuck it, right?
Yeah.
We should all be doing that with social media too.
Yeah.
Should do that with people, right? So boundaries. That's it. You know what? When we're talking about managing your stress, we're talking about setting and defending boundaries. That's really what it comes down to. And everything. Water quality, people quality, social media quality, sleep quality. Right. That's where you start.
Well, I think people don't even realize, like, going for a run is actually sometimes not the answer. Like, you want to move your body, and that's where I think where a lot of women get confused, because they're like, well, is running good for me or is it bad for me? And I mean, it does get very confusing, but I also think, well, if your body is really beat down and you're very, very stressed and you're having all these issues, like sprinting up and down hills and, doing a 60-minute boxing class, like, might feel like a stress relief, but it's probably adding more stress. So I feel like that's a hard thing to unpack when I'm trying to explain that to people. So can you sort of explain what's going on about when you're taking your body to like physical extremes, why that sometimes can make that stress in your body worse?
Yeah, of course. So our sort of tier 1 hormones, and I do like to look at them in tiers. When I say hormones, and it's like there's so many, right? You've got like DHEA and progesterone, testosterone, estrogen, all these different things, thyroid hormones. But at the very top of that food chain, sort of command center, you've got your cortisol and you've got your insulin. And those two manage, regulate, govern, direct traffic on so many different processes in the body. Cortisol, I need an elastic band for this. I always have one. If you watch any of our podcasts, I'm always like
a little scrunchy.
But it's good because I actually need it for this specifically. So cortisol. We have a certain amount of cortisol capacity, okay? And you can think of it almost like as a bank account. You've got a certain amount of money to work with. And so with cortisol, that is your stress response hormone. It's meant to do this. Acute stress, respond, right? So secrete, and then come back down. And secrete and come back down. So cortisol is not like the big enemy that everybody thinks it is, that social is sort of like presenting it to be. We need cortisol. We need the ability to respond to stress, to get out of a situation, to move faster, to, think smarter, whatever the case may be. The thing is that it just like with an elastic band, right? If I stretch it out and it's just chronically stressed out. So this, even if it's low grade chronic stress, because all of those other stressors that we just talked about are just perpetually there. Unfortunately, what happens to that elastic band is it doesn't snap back quite the same way. right? It gets stretched out. And so your cortisol capacity, kind of like a depleted bank account, it can't anymore. And so when that happens, the peaks of cortisol and also the depletion of cortisol has major implications when it comes to your insulin, which is going to have major implications on things like obviously your blood sugar regulation, and we'll get to it eventually, but your hormones. And I recognize that people are going out for a run generally because they think that it's going to be healthy and it's going to help them get fit and maybe even lean. But the problem is that when your insulin is dysregulated, your blood sugar is dysregulated, and your hormones are dysregulated, and I'll explain to you in a moment why that even happens, unfortunately, you're not going to be achieving the goal that you are setting out to achieve. You're actually taking so many steps back. Cortisol, because it is your stress response hormone and because it has the responsibility to, at the most primal level, get you out of trouble. So we always kind of give the example in the space of like the saber-toothed tiger back in the day, right? Like cortisol is the one that actually got you away from the saber-toothed tiger and got you to safety. That is the absolute most important function that the systems in your body have. It's to help you survive, is to get away from the saber-toothed tiger. Today, saber-toothed tiger is like strange person on social media, mortgage, bills, okay?
Yeah.
If you have depleted your cortisol levels because you have this low grade or even high grade chronic stress, the responsibility to get you out of trouble remains. It's just the reserve, right? The ingredients to actually get you out of trouble no longer exist. So what does the body do? It pulls resources from other systems in the body. Because it's not just going to let you die unless you get to an exhaustive phase, which hopefully we'll listen to this podcast and we'll implement all the strategies and we won't get there. But it pulls reserve from other systems in the body. And so oftentimes when we are seeing somebody whose digestion is just not doing what it needs to do, or their libido has tanked, or their periods are like really wonky, they've got, like crime scene flow, or they've lost their period, got amenorrhea, which a lot of our athletes are seeing, they've got a lot of brain fog. Like, why is it that we're seeing all of these other systems speak to us through symptom? It's because whatever reserve we have, or like almost like if they are individual bank accounts, that reserve is actually being redirected to your adrenals so that cortisol can respond properly, so that insulin can respond adequately and efficiently. So that run, if your stress level is not primed, is not in a place where it can take on the very acute, it's a short-term stress load of the run, you're going to be doing yourself a great disservice by going on it.
That makes a lot of sense.
That is such a good explanation.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, because I think for a lot of women, especially like if you were raised in the 80s or 90s where it's calories in, calories out, like to them the math is not mathing, right? Like I run in my Apple Watch that I burned 400 calories and I only ate 1,200 calories today. Like, how come I'm gaining weight? And then we're trying to explain what's going on. And well, so I need to run longer? No, that's not the answer at all. And then I think this also is like a nice segue into like contest prep and why breaks are important, because if I understand correctly, when that reserve is depleted, which can be if you're in a long contest prep, you're pushing for a very long time, maybe you have had to get to, just the depths of what needs to be done to be able to reach the level of conditioning. And, if you're going through a lot of things in your life and maybe it's time for a break. And I think that those breaks are important in order to like reestablish those levels and keep things in harmony. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, completely. You're 100% right. If I can just go back for 1 second, though, I do want to just touch on, because you brought up the calories in, calories out. And I know that there's a lot of people who will listen to this and they'll be like, well, what about calories in, calories out? And then they'll go as far as to say, there are people in third world countries who are starving and they're not obese. Yeah, we know. The thing is, calories in, calories out does matter. That's a law that we're not going to be able to circumvent or overwhelm. Yeah. The question is, how is your body utilizing those calories, and what are some of the driving forces that are driving down your metabolic output, so that for you to actually be able to lose that weight, you need to be eating sub 500 calories. And none of us want to do that. Like, people in third world countries are not volunteering into that system, right? We definitely don't want to do that here. It's uncomfortable. It's not realistic. It's nutrient depleting. It's a death sentence, right? So calories in, calories out does matter. You're not going to be able to initiate fat loss if you don't actually understand how that works, if you don't respect, what a calorie deficit is, but how low does that deficit need to go for you to actually be able to start moving weight. And for women who are, maybe they have a long history of dieting, maybe it is contest prep, or who are just sort of midlife and they're going through a lot of hormonal changes, right? That it's this sort of second puberty, this shift, that metabolic floor can actually be quite low. So yes, calories in, calories out, but there's more.
Yeah.
As far as taking those breaks, that's what you were asking me, right?
Yeah.
So think about it. Yeah, I think this might make sense to people. So postpartum, we're severely depleted. And if you run an HTMA, which is like a hair tissue mineral analysis, you'll see that we're so incredibly depleted because everything that we had went to nurturing, nourishing, growing this baby. And then just simply the act of delivering is so exhausting on the system. And so postpartum, unfortunately not here in North America, but in many other cultures and other countries in the world, they have this fourth trimester, in some cultures, like a mandatory 30 days where women with their newborn babies are actually not allowed to go out. And that entire time is spent to achieve two things. One is to, establish and develop the bond with the baby. And then the second one is actually to replete the mother, because we are in fact depleted. And the expectation for a mother to go forth and continue to nourish this child when she herself is completely depleted is unreasonable. And there are many cultures who understand that. We don't have that mentality here when it comes to postpartum health and care. But if you think of contest prep, and just like dieting in general, it is very much akin to pregnancy. It is a short, concentrated period of time of extreme output. And unfortunately, because of the way that we do things, not a lot of input. Contest prep, like we've been taught to sort of turn down the volume on our symptoms and white knuckle our way through, right? Like as if that somehow makes you more deserving of that podium. I don't think so, but that's the mentality. And so you have this period where you're just dissociating from your body, really disembodying and not listening to what your body's telling you. Every single system is having to give up reserve to be able to contend with this massive stress load. And so when we don't actually take the time to replete, and that is what an improvement season is supposed to begin with, you can even actually inject that throughout your prep as like dieting breaks, right? Yeah. Unfortunately, the end of term comes very quickly. Essentially what you end up with is a premature exit from being able to prep and compete for as long as you want. So yeah, repletion is essential. Diet breaks are, I think they should be a part of every prep, but it really comes down to, do you see this as a race to the finish, right? Are you like, how much are you trying to achieve in what period of time? Or are you willing to actually sort of extend the time during which you're going to prep for this incredible goal of getting on stage? Are you willing to extend it so that you can get on stage with greater health, with more vitality?
Yeah. I love that message for sure. We're big advocates of that, of like longer preps and, slow and steady and listening to your body. But I don't know if everybody sees it that way or, back in the day, like even I think about when I was competing in the early 2010, 11, 12, it was like a 12-week prep and you just did whatever it took. And we didn't have as much information as we do now about hormones and reverse dieting. Like it just wasn't something that we really, talked about or had as much knowledge about.
And I feel like you hit the nail on the head by saying how we white knuckle through it. I don't know how many times that you'll be about 10 weeks out and those symptoms kick in. You're really cold. Your hair may start falling out. You're extremely tired. And we're just also used to putting our heads down and getting to the end of the goal. And it's like, how far are we really digging ourselves into such a deep, not just a deficit, but something that's really going to disrupt our hormones that, when we come out of it, it might not be something that's so easily to come out of. That might be something that we have to work on to repair. So
and those
I know.
Symptoms, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just saying I've experienced that with my cycle, because that was always my problem, is I would lose my cycle and I would bury my head down and I would work with, white knuckle coaches, and it'd be like, no, it's just what happens. It's what you do. And when you're younger, it was like, okay, that's not a big deal. But now that I'm older, I'm 35, that it not having my cycle was detrimental. It took almost a whole year one time to get it back. And it's like, but that's exactly like why, you know, it's great to have people like you now in the industry that are so speaking so loud, like we can address these things, we can fix these things, you know, we can, you know, work together, like you can work
Yes.
with your coach.
Yes, and like that's why I have so much admiration for my business partner, for Angelica, because she was in the midst of her first prep, and she pulled out. I think she was, I want to say, it's either 6 or 2 weeks out.
I think
And
it
I
was
mean, she
two. I
yeah,
listened
and
to
she
your
was like,
podcast, I think. Yeah.
yeah, and she was like this close to getting on stage. She was so close. And I remember even seeing the pictures online, and she looked beautiful. She very much looked the part, but she felt horrible. And so that was, you know, for her, she really set that boundary for herself, right? Is that she didn't just want to get on stage and look the part; she wanted to feel the part. You know, we were very quick to look at the cover of a fitness magazine or look at these athletes on stage, look at, you know, pictures on social, and see that chiseled body, and for whatever reason translate that to me that was a very healthy body. But oftentimes that isn't the case. Oftentimes athletes are getting on stage in their most depleted state, metabolically, hormonally. And so what I was going to say before is that those symptoms that you're describing, you know, of hair fall and amenorrhea and, you know, the gut stuff, like that, those aren't the problem. Those aren't actually the problem. Those are the symptoms of the problem.
Yeah.
So the hormonal imbalance that you're worried about, like, you know, if I keep going, will I? No, you already did. You already did, right? Like if we were to run labs at the onset of your prep, and then at that point where you started feeling uncomfortable, you would actually see your markers move. The markers are not there to tell you that something's wrong. They're there to validate what it is that you're feeling. Like if I could get people to do just one thing, it's tune back in. Like your body has this incredible language that it's been speaking to you since day one. You have to learn to understand what it means, and the only way that you can do that is if you tune in and you continue to have those conversations with your body. It's like, you know, your friend is sitting and talking to you and you just turn away and you don't listen. You're not going to understand what their needs are, right? So those symptoms that you're talking, like that we're all bringing up here, like that's language. That's your body going like, we're going too far, come back. And that's why it's okay to not pick your show yet. Like you can sign your contract if you're pro, like if you're MPC, you can drop in at any time. If you're pro, I think if you've got like 2 weeks out, you can sign your contract. Yeah. So like you don't have to choose your show and then prep for it. You can prep and get on stage when your body is good and ready. That's a possibility. Not sure if anyone's considered that, but that's a possibility.
I think we're seeing more of that for sure. For that reason, that people are like, no, I want to make sure that I'm in a good spot, that I'm healthy, you know, and just make sure that they have ample time. And I think that's really smart. Yeah. So what are like some red flags if somebody is competing for the first time, and maybe this is the first time they've heard of any of this, and they don't know anybody that's struggled, or maybe they do, and then this person just fall off and I hate bodybuilding, I'm never competing again. And our goal really here is to share this information so that people can have happy, healthy preps, continue to do the sport that we love so much. So what are some things that would be a red flag that people should not ignore?
So all of the symptoms that we just discussed. So I know the one that, you know, is probably the most obvious to athletes, again, because it's easy to ignore a lot of the noise, right, that's coming from our body. The one that's obviously the hardest to ignore because, you know, we're trying to get to a certain size and shape to be on stage is really, you know, fat loss resistance. So assuming that you're working with a coach that knows his or her stuff, or even if you're self-coached, it should be, based on calories in, calories out, it should be pretty predictable what your rate of fat loss will be, right? Assuming that you're actually dotting all your I's and crossing all your T's and you're seeing your protocol through. When we begin to see that the body isn't responding the way that we predicted it to, it could mean let's change some of the variables, right? Let's change some of the implements. But if your body isn't predictably responding to those either, and we have enough academia, we have enough knowledge in the industry now to be able to actually predict quite accurately how the body should respond to a protocol, that is definitely the time to pull back and not look at what is happening right now, what being the scale isn't moving in the direction that I wanted to, but why, right? So not what can I do about this, but like, why is this even happening? I think that's like the most obvious red flag, is just not losing weight at the rate at which you thought you could. Things that a lot of coaches normalize, and they are, I would say that they're common, but they're not normal, would be gut distension, no longer being able to digest foods comfortably later in your prep that you were able to digest comfortably early in your prep. That means that there's some sort of dysbiosis, there's a shift in your gut microbiome. Maybe there's increased permeability. Maybe because of that increased permeability, you now have some sort of gut infection. Maybe there's a pathogen that's been able to proliferate because of that. That would be definitely something that I would want to step back and ask myself why that was happening and what can I do about it, because you're not getting on stage with a distended gut. You're also not going to be able to metabolize, fraction your nutrients and assimilate them if your gut isn't working properly. If you get to the point where your cycles are becoming dysregulated, and even if you lose it entirely, that's a massive red flag. You know that there is hormonal dysregulation. So, it might be worth it to you to just keep going. Maybe you think it's convenient to not have a menstrual cycle. Great. I won't have my bleed on show day, but you're up there for just a few moments. And the ramifications in your post-show could be so detrimental to not just like everything from the neck down, but from the neck up to your psyche. So really any symptom shift over the course of prep should be a red flag, right? In your daily life, if you're not prepping for a show, if you don't have a goal that causes you to ignore symptoms, when anything shows up, you're going to want to look into it. So what is a red flag in your regular life should be considered a red flag in prep too.
And I think these things happen in women that don't compete, like women that aren't, doing shows, like women that are, maybe they've overcome a great weight loss journey, or I don't know if you have this in Canada, but there's something here in the States called 75 Hard. Well, it's probably all over the place.
It's everywhere,
Yeah, and I mean, that is like working out twice a day, and that can be really hard on the body, and I've seen people on the other side of that with health issues and things like that. So I don't think that this is isolated just to competitors.
It's not.
And maybe we're more aware because, we're getting in a swimsuit and posing, and we are, gosh, why am I so bloated? And, I've commonly see people be like, well, maybe it's my pre-workout and it's artificial sweetener in this, or maybe I can't have rice anymore, or maybe it should be oatmeal that it needs to go, and things like that. And I think it's really just sort of like a warning sign of other issues. So can you, in a sort of a simple way, explain why that is? Why somebody would develop some issues digesting foods or have some gut dysbiosis in a prep or in a calorie restricted phase, or they're pushing really hard?
Yeah, so it's a couple of things. One we sort of already touched upon, which is our cortisol capacity, and with it being a primary focus for our metabolism, for our body to survive, and requiring adequate cortisol response for that process. When you are taking on something like a prep, or even just for a regular woman, prolonged phases of dieting, typically cyclical dieting, women often jump from one to the next. It's like, oh, that one didn't work, so I'll try another one, not I'll try a reverse. We have to borrow energy from other systems in the body, and so we will borrow from digestive prowess, and we'll borrow from exactly that, our ability to actually process food. That's one. Two could be that we are eating from a very limited list of foods, which is going to very quickly impact the variety of bacteria that we have in our gut, and so that will definitely shift the ratios within our gut microbiome. That is going to come with potentially, overgrowth of certain bacteria. We can end up with SIBO, so that small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. A lot of supplement use could definitely come into play here. And so, Angelica and I speak a lot on this. This is something that we rant about, but the very liberal, heavy-handed use of probiotics, obviously they have their place, but I would treat probiotics the same way you would if you are the kind of person who would take an antibiotic. Treat a probiotic like an antibiotic. It needs to, there are specific strains, and they are used at specific times for specific reasons, and to just apply them, intake them without diagnosis, without understanding what the body's very specific need is, could actually do more harm than good. So definitely supplement use. A lot of the supplements that we take in general, even, actually when you look at our foods, I think a lot of the ingredients of our foods are being supplemented by ingredients that are not foods at all. And I don't want to sit here and be like, get off all processed foods. That's not realistic. And I think that in and of itself can just cause so much stress. I hate to be really dogmatic about foods, but when we start managing lower calorie intakes by introducing a lot of these sugar substitutes and just low cal chemicals, unfortunately, those can be really disruptive, again, to that perfect ecosystem, that, balance within the gut, and that can create a lot of issues. Stress in general, cortisol in general, can definitely, like I said, increase gut permeability, and with that permeability, we can end up with a lot of foods and food chemicals actually getting into gen-pop, like into bloodstream. That can create massive histamine responses, which can be things like, regular allergies. So brain fog, itchiness, rashes, but it can also be gut distension and just dysbiosis and discomfort, constipation, diarrhea, all of those sorts of things. So there are a lot of different reasons. Again, it's just a matter of, are you, when you're coming into your prep, number one, are you ready, right? So is your gut sealed? Do you have gut integrity? Do you have a great enzymatic flow? Is your liver nice and clear to be able to process a lot of the extra, maybe it is supplements, or if you're not a natural athlete and using PEDs, like where is your liver health? Is it going to be able to actually process those things? But beyond that, is it able to clear? So you think about, our bodies need to be able to metabolize all this and clear it from the body. Our drainage pathways need to be open from top to tail. And I find that that's something that a lot of protocols are missing, is almost like the primer for prep, right? So we've all gotten on the same page with respect to exit strategies from prep, so the reverse diet, but a lot of people don't have that like phase one. So in advance of prep, how are we getting the body ready? And doing that is actually what's going to enable you to be able to stay in prep longer and hopefully steer clear of a lot of these symptoms while you're in it.
Yeah.
I love that so much.
Yeah.
Like
I know we do that. We do that a lot with our clients. We talk about that, right? When they say like they want to like start a prep, or they're getting ready, or they start as lifestyle and they eventually want to do a prep. I know Jillian does a really good job speaking about getting them ready. Like, hey, we should do labs. We should really make sure you're digesting well, sleeping well. Stress is like, monitored, just aware of that. So
good habits, like all those things. Like, let's not just like drink as much as we can until like prep starts, and now I'm no longer drinking, I'm no longer eating these foods. Like, we need to be doing those things for health reasons so that we're strong going into our prep. And Mandy, you just brought up labs. That was going to be my next question was, that is thrown out a lot now that we're talking about hormones and prep and, all these stories that people share. So if somebody is sort of like, I don't know what that means, and I'll have people again that are just like, I'll just go to my doctor and like have them like run my tests and see what my blood work is. What is the best advice that you could give to a competitor for things that they should be checking routinely, and how often they should be checking those things?
Okay, great question. Is that a cat that I hear?
I hear a cat too.
Okay, I'm sorry. My cat got stuck in my room. Okay, she was sleeping and I forgot to put her out, and now she's crying at my door.
I was just wondering, like, is that a door? Is that Wi-Fi? Like, what is that? Okay,
no, I really thought you guys couldn't hear her because she's like in the far corner crying. She was sleeping before we started, so usually she just sleeps all day, and so now all of a sudden she's just like over here, and I'm like, really, Biscuit? Really?
So on Zoom will actually like just cut all of the sort of superfluous like sounds. So I can have a whole war happening in the other room, kids killing each other, my dogs are going like, and you won't hear a thing. Like, you think that I just live in the most zen space. That's a Zoom feature. I guess the platform that we're on doesn't offer that, because
I think it cuts it after. Like,
it cuts it after. Yeah. So like when we do the editing, we can normalize the sound and get like rid of all the background. But since it's like live recording right now, it will pick up like everything.
So if this actually stays in the edit, everybody's like, are they okay? Because I don't hear anything. Everyone's like,
oh no, we're totally gonna leave it now. That's like. Yeah, that's like why we love that's why we do our podcast, like this style, I guess you should say. Like, we don't edit that much because like it is a bunch of moms. How many times do our kids need something, our animals need something?
Always.
Somebody rings our doorbell, like it just happens. So no, this will not be edited out. Everybody, my cat is stuck in my office crying.
Okay, so don't kill me. Labs, right? You want to know like what and how often? Okay. Yeah. I just want to make sure that I remember that I wasn't fully distracted by the cute meowing. Okay, so why don't we start with this? Functional labs versus conventional labs. Because you can absolutely go to your primary care physician and you can get some blood work drawn. And that's fine, okay? I'm not telling you not to do that. Go and do that. If you're here in Canada and you've got coverage and you can do that for free, go and do that. Take advantage. The thing is that the ranges that conventional medicine looks at to determine whether or not, it looks normal or, it's not, and this is something to be concerned about. There are different ranges than functional medicine practitioners actually look at. Why is that? So in conventional care, we're looking for diagnosable conditions, right? We're looking for something that has an insurance code attached to it, because then we can give it a name, then we can process it, then we can prescribe for it. Okay, and there are some instances where that is absolutely necessary. So we're looking at general population as the pool from which we establish those ranges. General population is not healthy, right? So they're not really the greatest benchmark for, for health and for health markers. And so when you go into your primary care physician's office and you run blood work and you're feeling all the things, you're feeling all kinds of symptoms, and your labs come back normal. Yes, they are normal. They're common. They are the same as your neighbor and the guy down the street, because you're all living in the same generally unhealthy conditions, right? The super healthy people, those would be outliers, and they're generally not part of that pool. When we look at functional health and functional health markers, we're actually looking for optimization. So what we're using is a generally healthy, health-minded section of the population, and it is on those people upon which those ranges are established. So it is more likely to hear that something is out of range when you're symptomatic with a functional care practitioner than you would with a conventional medicine practitioner. So with that being said, go ahead, get those labs run. There's nothing wrong with it. Just understand that the paper doesn't come before the person. Right? So if you go and you get your labs run and it comes back as everything's normal, but you're feeling like junk, that needs attention. And that might be the point at which you actually go towards functional care. And there's an abundance of labs that you can run to address all kinds of issues, from mold, mycotoxins, from neurotransmitters, your gut, sex hormones, all of it. Whether you're an athlete, whether you're just health-minded, there's a few that I would absolutely run. At the beginning, I don't want to say as many as you can, obviously within limit, but if I had to pick out a few, one for hormones, I would run either a stress and hormone panel or a Dutch. I'll briefly explain the difference. The Dutch is obviously the one that I think a lot of us are used to hearing about. It's amazing. It's very comprehensive. What it has that a stress and hormone panel doesn't is it actually tells us how the body prefers, like how it biases hormone clearance. And there are different pathways through which estrogens in particular can be cleared. Some are, there's one that is preferred, there's one that is like generally neutral, and there's one that could become a bit of an instigator in the system and could be cancer causing. And that's an important thing to know, especially if you're going to be introducing exogenous hormones, whether they be bioidentical or not. If we're going to be manipulating hormone levels, we definitely want to know how the body is actually going to be processing them. Some people, they have a tendency, like you could take a male athlete, for instance, who, takes testosterone and it aromatizes into estrogen, and all of a sudden he's experiencing all these very estrogen dominant symptoms. Well, it would have been nice if we knew that, right, in advance of. So definitely something like the Dutch or the stress and hormone panel. So the SHP is one that I would run with a client who isn't necessarily looking to introduce hormone replacement therapy, because it's still going to tell us everything we need to know about their diurnal pattern, so what their cortisol is looking like in a 24-hour period. So much better than looking at as a snapshot on a blood test. Right. We also want to take a look at, your not just your total hormones, but actually free hormones. So like the hormones that are actually doing the work in the body. And so with the SHP and the Dutch, you get to take a look at your testosterone, all three estrogens, progesterone, DHEA, which is that counterpart to cortisol. So I would definitely be taking a look at those, and especially if you are introducing any sort of hormone replacement therapy, PDs, whatever it's going to be, I would run and rerun that lab probably every 8 to 12 weeks. We want to know not just where your levels are, but where are those hormones going in the body? Where are they depositing? It's really, really important information. So it's not just a matter of getting onto a protocol. You want to actually make sure that you're tweaking it, that you're titrating it appropriately, so that it's, helping you actually achieve the goal that you intended to achieve. I would always take a look at a GI map. So GI map is the stool test that tells us about everything that is happening in the gut. It would really be crazy to take that one off the table, because the gut is actually connected to every other system and organ in the body. And for athletes in particular, if you want to know how well you're actually processing your proteins, your carbs, and your fats, the GI map can tell you that. Crucial information. So if you're finding that you're at a point where it's like you can't digest protein the same way anymore, that might have everything to do, yes, with hormones, believe it or not, but it can also have to do with your pancreatic outputs, right? Maybe you're missing a gallbladder and we need to support you there. So the GI map is really fantastic, and I would never take that one off the table. The other one that I would look at, aside from, blood work, is an HTMA. I think that one is worth doing at the onset of a prep and then at the end of a prep. The HTMA, we spoke about it briefly before, so it's a hair tissue mineral analysis. And while it doesn't give you absolutes, so it's not like quantitative, like you have, this much magnesium and you have this much copper, what it does tell you is where those ratios are, because all minerals have to exist in, it's kind of like this, Batman needs the Joker, right? So they all have, they need each other. Good needs evil, and they have to exist in those perfect numbers and those perfect ratios. And when one is too high, the other one can end up too low, and that can impact, again, all the systems in our body, right? Minerals really are the spark plugs of our health. So you really would have no right, I think, to introduce, I want you to take these vitamins or these minerals, even though they're technically healthy, right? If they're not for that person, if they're not meeting needs, then it's not actually for their health. So HTMA, hair tissue mineral analysis, GI map, both of those I would say run at the beginning and at the end, so you understand where you're starting and where you need to replete. Definitely some blood work. I would look through functional ranges personally, because I think we're looking for health optimization and not just being, part of a sickly gen pop. And then of course either the Dutch or the SHP, the stress and hormone panel, just depending on what your plans are with respect to supplementation.
I have to say something, because so many people find this interesting that I talk to, because a lot of people, unless they're in the healthcare field, don't know that our markers are not the same. Like, there's not just like a standard of markers for when you get blood work done. It just amazes me. My husband had to get blood work done last year. He had to get an array of things. But because of, like you said, we had an underlying problem. We're trying to figure out what's going on. We go to a slew of doctors. We go to a specialist, still not figuring it out. Mm-hmm. And we just don't know what's going on. And so I finally was like, hey, because after being an athlete for so long, I've had plenty of labs done. And I'm like, hey, try this functional medicine doctor. Try this. He's like, fine. I swear the anger he got when he got his labs back compared to the practitioner, like just the normal doctor, was just he did not understand it. He spent like an hour, maybe more, on the phone with this functional medicine doctor who's fantastic, mm-hmm. and explained all of that, like in detail, like, hey, you are possibly like all of these things that like could be going wrong, and explained so many things. And there's like, hey, they don't check for it. This is not what they do. This is not, and it's like, I feel like the world or America should know that, should know that these are not the same. Like, if just because you go get your labs at a doctor and you still feel like junk, like, go to a different doctor, go to a functional medicine doctor. I wish people knew that. So many people don't.
And it could be as simple as, actually, if you go to your regular physician and then you're not feeling well, which is probably what caused you to go to them in the first place, mm-hmm. and they run your labs and they come back like, no, everything looks normal. What I would ask them is, then why am I feeling this way? I think that's a fair question to ask. Like, we're so quick to just be like, okay, my doctor said everything's fine, I guess I'll go now, prescription in hand. But that's the question. Like, can you explain why I'm feeling this way? Oh, well, it might just be like your hormones. Okay, well, but why though, right? Well, it's okay, we can just put you on birth control. Well, do I have a birth control deficiency? Right? Like, oh, well, you can just take, Tylenol for your headache. Well, do I have a Tylenol deficiency? Like, ask the hard question, which is why, because they will always tell you what. Ask why. And if they can't answer that, it is absolutely okay to fire your physician and go and find mm-hmm. another one. That's okay. That is within your right, is within your entitlement. And I think that we need to get to a place where we feel more comfortable advocating for ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. I think that's so true. Like, I think the people are so quick to just like, like symptom suppress. Like, let me just get rid of this problem. Let me just put a Band-Aid on this, right? And certainly there is like a role for like, surgeons and specialists and all these things. Like, you have a bullet in your body or you need surgery or all these other things, right? But when we're talking about like, healthy, fit people that have a few things that are, not going well or that they're feeling, and then their doctor says, well, this is just getting old, this is what it is. Like, you don't have to accept that as an answer. Like, there are alternatives, and that's why this is such an exciting conversation, because I do want people to realize, like, it's not like you're turning away from general medicine. Like, there is still like a place for that. However, your health is the most important thing, and as mothers taking care of our kids, like, we have to take care of ourselves too. So I think this conversation is so important about like, just keep asking those questions and keep determining what that root cause is, and just so that you can not only look your best but feel your best, right?
Yes, we do owe that to ourselves, but we also owe that to the people that we have committed ourselves to. So, you speak about like, our children, right? So we need to take care of ourselves too, but oftentimes our self-care is actually the currency that we use to deposit into our kids. So it's like, I will sacrifice doing this thing for myself so that I can show up for them. Whereas the reality is you're showing up depleted. So for me, like in our family, and this might sound really, sort of self-serving or egotistical, and I'm okay if it's perceived that way, but I'll tell you right now that it works really well for us. The hierarchy is me, then myself and my husband, so our marriage, and then the kids or the family as a whole. And that's because when I'm whole, when I'm healthy, I pour so much better into our marriage. And when we're really good as a couple, we're amazing as a team to handle the kids, right? So
I can't like, I know exactly what you mean, how it might feel like selfish. In our household, it's actually the exact same way. We don't say it like out loud, but like we don't say it too much, but like, no, when we like, because it's just three of us, so our 15-year-old, but when he makes us mad, his dad is so quick to be like as soon as we're like saying the sorries and having the like conversation, after like the argument, he's always like, you're like, make your mother happy. Like, you're like, you make your mother happy so we all can be happy. That is like, that is it. And then, so like, it makes sense, because if you as a whole like are taken care of and cared for, and you're revitalized and you feel love, you give the love back and like in folds, like you give it so much more as you feel full. And that's how like our household functions like the same way. So
but the point is that you can also give all of that love to yourself. Like, it doesn't have to come from the bottom up. You can actually fill your own cup, and it may actually come down to how you're eating, sleeping, the questions, the conversations you're having with your physician, what you're doing within community. I heard a really beautiful quote that I actually like almost feel compelled to tattoo it on myself. It really is so powerful, and it goes like this: never let your storm get your loved ones wet. And that one hit me in the gut, because certainly when I was going through all of my hormonal dysregulation, all of my woes, I was very irritable, and I was short with people that mean the absolute world to me. I wasn't able to show up for them the way that, not just that I would have wanted to, but the way that they deserved me to show up.
Right.
That was me letting my storm get them wet, because I didn't do what I needed to do to manage myself, to heal myself. They got wet. They got, they were the side effect. And how sad, right? So I think that, if we're going to be in relationship, if we're going to be parents, if we're going to be caregivers, if we're going to extend ourselves to any member of community, we have a massive responsibility to take better care of ourselves. And I get that can all sound really woo-woo, but I'm telling you from like, this is a first-hand account. There can come a point where you just feel so physically rotten in your body and in your mind that you are almost like third-party observing yourself behave like a lesser version of yourself to people that mean the absolute most to you. So I can't like underscore enough how much it matters to not take your labs look normal as like an answer. That's not an answer. That's being dismissive, and it is gaslighting, and it's not okay.
So we hope that you enjoyed this great interview with Simone Maman. And because the information just kept on rolling and we wanted to be able to share this information with everybody in a consumable amount of time, we have decided to do a part 2 of this episode. So please tune in next Friday where we dive deep into perimenopause.
Yeah, thank you guys again for listening so much. We do hope you enjoyed this episode. It was very informative, and we cannot wait for the next week episode of perimenopause. Now, any platform that you guys are listening on, we definitely would appreciate if you share with your friends and family and share with your social media group. It can absolutely help many people out there. And then, of course, on whatever platform you're on, like, subscribe, and leave us any feedback, because if there's anything you guys would like to hear, we would love to be able to dive deep and talk about that as well. So again, thank you guys, and we look forward to next week.
See you next week.